Hey folks, I'm Steve Butler. Today we're building a project you've probably seen done 1,000 times. The only difference is no joiner, no planer, no problem. We're building the shaker side table. Come see how we do it here in the garage. All right, let's have a look at today's project. Now the shakers were all about simplicity, craftsmanship, and delicate clean lines, and this table project has all of that. We have 4 tapered legs, which are tapered on 2 sides, and I did that on the table saw with a homemade jig. We're gonna build one together. We have 4 aprons with a nice stop chamfer and a nice square top. Now the beauty of this project is that I'm using off-the-shelf lumber, readily available at any home center. You don't need all the bells and whistles to make this table. First thing we need to do is make our taper leg jig. Yeah, I'm a big fan of mid-century modern furniture. I really like the simplicity and the clean lines of that aesthetic. But the nice thing about shaker furniture, it's very similar, even though it came first, but it blends in very well to any aesthetic. All right, let's have a look at our jig. Now you can buy commercial taper leg jigs and you spend a lot of time adjusting them. I like simply going to my offcut bin and making my own. I put all the information I need on the jig, the size of the legs, the size of my aprons, etc., etc. I coat them with some lacquer and then I put them aside and I have them if I want to make this project again. Anyways, I bought some 1.25 inch square stock. It was 8 feet long at my home center, and that's what we're going to use for our legs. Our legs are 24 inches long. So what I did is I measured 1.25 inches over, and I don't want to do it right at the end of my piece of plywood. I want to be able to put a stop block here. So just measure 1.25 inches, about a few inches up, and then I measured 24 inches down, and the bottom of our leg tapers to 3/4 inch. I then drew my lines, and that tells me where to put my stop blocks. So, first thing I'm going to do, put a little bit of glue. I've already laid this out on this board. Just going to put a little bit of glue on this block, and that's going to hold the leg in place when we push it through the table saw. And I just want to make sure it's flush with the edge. And I always slide these a little back and forth to create a little friction so the glue sticks. And now I'm just going to do the same for the one up top. Now, if you're a little past your 24 inch, a little longer, that's absolutely fine. All right, now what I'm going to do, if you can imagine the leg in there, and I drew my line, my taper line, I'm just going to put some blocks on the line and the leg will butt up against it. It'll just kind of hold it in place. These do not have to be elaborate whatsoever. And that's the beauty of it. They're simple, they work and do the job. Now if you have any excess glue or squeeze out coming out on your leg point, just wipe it off. You don't want that to dry in there. You want your leg stock to be able to go flush up against here. You don't need a lot of these. All right, you can see how that's taken shape. Now, because my leg is 1.25 inches thick, we're going to use a toggle clamp, a hold down clamp, to hold our leg down, but I need to build up the area that it's going to attach to. So we're just going to put 2 pieces of our 3/4 inch wood on there. Shoot a couple of brads in that. Now we'll just attach the second one. There we go. All right, let's just attach this toggle clamp. All right, that looks great. We're just going to put this aside and let the glue dry. Let's go cut our parts to size. All right, the first thing we're going to do is rip our apron pieces to width. I've set the fence at 3/4 inch from the blade. Now, general rule of thumb for using a push stick, if the distance between the blade and the fence is greater than your fist, then you don't need one. In this case, it's narrower, so I need to use a push stick. Now, the blade height, I've turned this up so it's about the thickness of a pencil or 1/4 inch above our workpiece. All right, let's get started. I'm going to put the dust collector on. Make sure you have safety glasses on, some hearing protection. I'm doing a lot of talking. In your case, wear a dust mask. All right, now that we have our apron pieces cut to width, we just have to cross-cut everything to length. All right, first thing we're going to do is cut our 2 long aprons, and they are 13 5/8 inches long. There we go. We have our 2 long aprons cut. Let's go cut our 2 short ones. All right. I took a measure and I drew a line at 12 3/4 inches. Now we're just going to cross cut our 2 short aprons to size. All right, our legs are 24 inches long. So I took a measure and I drew a line with my square. I've also made a little line on my miter gauge. That way I can just butt the other leg right up to that line and cut all 4. Again, I raised the blade so it's about 1/4 inch above our workpiece. All right, let's cut these to length. All right, that looks great. We have all of our parts for the table project cut to size. Before we go ahead and taper these legs, we want to cut our mortises first, and we're doing that over on the router table. Our mortise is 1/4 inch wide by 2 3/4 inches long and 3/8 of an inch deep. So what I did is I have my 1/4 inch bit set in my router table, and I drew a line from the center of my bit 2 3/4 inches over on the fence, and I just put that line on there and a piece of tape to tell me when to stop. All right, I'm going to do one pass, flip it over, do another pass, do the same thing on all the legs, and then we'll raise the bit till we get our depth. All right, that looks great. Now I'm just going to raise the bit so that we get a 3/8 of an inch deep mortise, and we'll take a second pass on all the legs. All right, that looks great. We have all our mortises cut on our legs. The only thing left to do is to taper them. But before we do that, let's go to the bench and glue up the boards that make up our tabletop. All right, let me show you what I did. I drew what's called a cabinet maker's triangle on the boards, and it's just simply alignment. It just helps me get these boards organized for glue up. Now, what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna flip 2 edges of our board on here. You could use a brush, a card, whatever you want to spread this glue out. I simply just put a bead of glue on the top edge of my board. You don't want too much. You have a lot of cleaning up to do, but you do not want to starve the joint also. You want to make sure you have a mallet handy, extra clamps, a rag, everything you need just in case. All right. As I put this down, the glue rolls down the edge. Butt that one up, put this one down, bring these boards together, just give them a little squeeze, and then I just slide them side to side, just create a little friction so that when I put the clamps on, they don't slide. Just helps line it up. All right. Now, we do not want to reef on these right away. We're just going to make them snug at first, and then we'll make sure they're laying flat on our clamps. And if they don't, you could always use a C-clamp. Attach it to that to help line them up. All right, we just want to put one across the boards in the middle. And why we do that is if we want to alternate our clamps, we want to have a clamp on the top, the bottom, the top, the bottom. If we didn't do that and we just had them on one face, when we went to clamp them up, the boards would buckle. Now, the bars of these clamps are aluminum. If they were stainless steel, the moisture in the glue could react with the metal and cause some streaking or staining in the wood, and you just have some extra sanding and cleaning up to do. So now we'll just tighten these right up. There we go, that looks great. We'll just put this aside, let it cure. We'll go to the table saw and cut the tapers on those legs. All right, it's real easy to get turned around here. We're cutting our taper from the bottom up to the top. So what I mean by that is we're starting at the 3/4 of an inch mark, and it's going to come right up here and then leave a shoulder where our tenons will fit into the mortise. So it's real easy to get turned around. You want to make sure you have all your legs with the mortises towards you to put in the jig. Now I'm using a store-bought toggle clamp. I needed to make sure that the handle went over my fence. The distance from my fence to the blade is simply the width of my jig. All right. I have the blade set 1/4 of an inch above our workpiece. Again, safety glasses and hearing protection. There we go. Just going to undo this clamp, turn this over. Again, you want your mortise out. Save these offcuts because the leg tapers. They'll help clamp it down. Just go ahead, do the other side. We'll do the same thing on the other 3 legs. All right, there we go. That looks great. Now we just have to go and cut our tenons. We'll do that right here on the table saw. All right, let me show you what I did. I went ahead and I made a test piece for our tenon. Now we're using 3/4 inch thick stock, and we have a 1/4 inch tenon. So we have our tenon in the middle and a 1/4 inch shoulder on either side. Now I'm using a miter gauge against the fence on the table saw, And what that does is I've set it at 3/8 of an inch from the outside part of the blade. And that's the length of our tenon. So when I bring this up, I cannot go past that mark. I can't make a mistake. So I make one pass, I'll flip it over, make a second pass, and then our shoulder cuts are established. And then all I have to do is just move it away from the fence incrementally and nip away at it until the shoulder's all cleaned up. Flip it over, do the same thing on the other side. Now, normally you do not want anything to get trapped between the blade and the fence. We're not cutting all the way through our piece. We're just cutting partially through our workpiece, and it's also supported by the miter gauge. So we'll go right past, slide it over, do the same thing. So that's fine. All right, always have your mortise here so you can double check. And that's a nice fit. We have a little room for the glue. If this was really tight, the glue would expand and could crack our joint. The general rule of thumb is you want to be able to hold this up without it falling out, but you don't want to have to use a hammer to put it in the mortise. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and cut all the tenons on our aprons. All right, there we go. That looks great. We have all our tenons cut and we have both cheeks cut. Now what we need to do is cut away our shoulder right there. And now all I'm going to do, this is another reason why I like this setup. I do not have to move the fence whatsoever. I just simply raise the blade and we're just going to nip off that shoulder. So there we go. We have our cheeks and our shoulders, our tenons are cut. Now what I want to do is just want to go to the router table and do that stop chamfer. All right, let me show you what I did. I took out our mortising bit and I put a chamfer bit in, and I drew a couple of lines on my router fence. The first one is where I want to start my cut, and the second one is where I want to end. And you just don't want to come into the router bit haphazardly. What you do is, I put my apron up against the router fence, and that acts as a fulcrum so I can pivot into it. And I'll just slowly push this in until I hit my line and bring this across until I stop. If I didn't do that, the router bit could kick this back. Another thing you want to check for is we're doing the sides where we have our shoulders cut, or the edge, pardon me. So you want to make sure you have everything lined up properly. It's so easy to get turned around and get confused. All right, let's get started. All right, that looks great. Let's go to the bench and glue our aprons to the legs. All right, we have all our aprons and our rails ready to be glued up. We're going to do this in sections just to make it easier. It can be really cumbersome if you're trying to glue up all 4 aprons to the 4 legs at first. So we're going to do 2. We're going to do it in halves. When those are dry, then we'll glue up the other aprons. So I'm going to start with the shorter aprons. And I mentioned it earlier, but we're just going to do a little dry fit first. This is the fit you're looking for. You can see how that's fitting in there. I have to push it in, but I don't have to use my mallet. And you want to fit where it doesn't fall out. That's actually perfect. That's what we're looking for every time. All right, have a little bit of glue here, and you don't need a lot. Like I said, if you put too much on, you're just going to spend more time cleaning it up. So I want to put it on the cheeks. just so we get a nice bead for squeeze out. A little bit on the shoulders, that's exactly what you want. And I'm just going to put a little on the end grain shoulder here. Perfect. All right. Join this, and I want to bring that apron up to the top of the leg flush. Put that in. Make sure you have a cloth. Clean up any squeeze out. You can use a damp cloth like I am to clean up that glue, or you could let this cure and then use a chisel. I find it easier to get in these corners before I put the clamps on. All right, let's just do the same thing on this tenon. You don't have to rush, but you just want to, be thorough. This glue starts curing pretty quickly. That's why I have my mallet here in case we need to take these apart. You have extra clamps. We have a cloth for cleanup. Just have everything handy and convenient. Let's bring that down. All right. Now I'm just using this clamp as a support. Make sure this is flush on there. And then this one will tighten it up down at the bottom here. There we go. I'll just clean up this squeeze out and then we'll go ahead and do the same thing for the other side. There we go. These look great. You can see how our base is coming together. Now I just have to connect the long aprons and it's done. Same thing as before. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on our tenon. You don't need a ton, but you don't want to starve the joint either. Just a nice squeeze out. Just want to make that flush with the top. Let gravity work for us. Set that down. Do our other one. Just want to fit these in and we'll come back and make some adjustments as needed. Bringing this up so it's flush with the top of our leg. There we go. So I'm just going to put one clamp right in the middle and it'll apply equal pressure. Once we get this one done, turn it around. All right, that looks great. I'm just going to clean up the glue squeeze out and then we'll go cut and sand our top. All right, let me show you what I did. We took our clamps off. And I went ahead and I made these little corner blocks that I attached inside just to give a little more strength to the joints. I also added these cleats, and that's what we're going to use to attach our top, our base to the top. And they sit just below the surface, and I'll show you why. Now, I went ahead and cut our tabletop to size. And with those cleats being just below the surface, what that does is if there's any indiscrepancies in your top, this helps draw it in nice and tight. All right, just going to go ahead and attach our top. Now, one thing I did, you don't have to worry about it with the cleats that are attached to the top the long grain direction. But the cleats that go across the grain, what I did is I put a drill bit in my drill, and in the screw holes, I just went back and forth with my drill bit just to elongate the screw holes a bit, and that'll allow the screws to move when the top expands and contracts. All right, there we go, that looks great. Well, a project that's been done 1,000 times before, the only difference is no joiner, no planer, no problem. I hope you come back and see us here in the garage.
Just found your number, thought I'd drop you a line. You know I've been out on this road such a long, long time. Just wanted to let you know I'm doing just fine. But hey, I'm doing fine out here on the road. As long as I have friends to call, I'm never alone. Folks wonder how
And I did that on the table saw with a jig, a homemade jig I made, and I'm going to show you how I did that. We're going to make a jig, and then we're going to, too many jigs.